Velvet Shank is what I call a winter specialist. You only really find it in winter. You might occasionally find it in late autumn, like November, and possibly early spring, but certainly the most common months that I find it is December, and even more so January and February. It loves the cold, being highly frost tolerant, and it can even survive being frozen solid for days. In fact, a freeze and then a thaw actually helps stimulate spore production. It's quite common and grows in large clumps or clusters, normally overlapping each other, and it grows on many types of dead or diseased deciduous trees like elm or ash. This mushroom must be cooked before consumption, not because it's toxic raw, it's just that it's very tough and fibrous. In terms of identifying it, the cap starts out quite convex in shape and it flattens out with age. The average width of a cap is around 10 centimeters, and it's this orangey yellow color, normally darker in the middle. It's smooth to touch and sometimes a bit slimy, especially in wet weather. When it is slimy, the slime can almost be dripping off, but it's easily wiped or washed off. The gills, believe it or not, start out white when they're young, but they then go yellow with age. The gills are of differing lengths, with some not reaching the stem, and they aren't particularly crowded. I'd say they're quite widely spaced. The stem is light yellow in young specimens, but dark brown to almost black eventually in more mature specimens, and lighter in colour near the top. It has a velvety feel in mature specimens, which is probably where it gets its name, the velvet shank, from, of course. And in fact, its species name, velutipes, means with velvet legs, and the genus name, Flammulina, translates to very small flame, and so its scientific name, Flammulina velutipes, kind of translates to very small flame with velvet legs. The average height of the mushroom is about 3 centimeters. The flesh is thin and quite light in colour, almost like an off-whitish colour with a yellowy tinge, though it does darken in more mature specimens to an orangey brown. It has a pleasant smell and the taste is quite mild but very nice. It's quite sweet and mealy, and the spores, if you were to do a spore print, which I would highly recommend if you are new to velvet shank, are white. Technically they're very slightly off-white, but they're basically white. Now for the toxic lookalikes. There's always a toxic lookalike, isn't there? The most serious toxic lookalike is the funeral bell. As the name suggests, that is deadly poisonous. However, the good news is this is not a mushroom you'd ever find in January or February, though some extra care is obviously needed if you're foraging for velvet shanks in November. Funeral bells do normally grow on coniferous wood, but you can occasionally get them on deciduous wood as well. If you want any extra reassurance though, the funeral bell will have a very clear ring or skirt on the stem, whereas the velvet shank will not have any kind of ring on the stem. That's one of the easiest ways to tell the difference, other than of course a spore print, because the funeral bell spores will be rusty brown, completely different to the whitish spores of the velvet shank. The sulphur tuft is another poisonous mushroom, not deadly but poisonous. That one can be found all year round, and it also grows out of wood, but the sulphur tuft will not have a black stem, and the gills will have a greenish tinge to them too, and the colour of the mushroom, especially on top, is more of a sulphur yellow colour. And again, if you do a spore print, you'll find that the spores of the sulphur tuft are a purpley brown colour. Anything else that could possibly be confused with a velvet shank and that are dangerous are very rare in January and will not have white spores.